last two modules. So, both module 3 and 4, quick module lang. So, pagsasamahin ko na today para hindi na natin i-tackle in two separate classes. So, today, module 3 and 4 for Aerodrome Management 424. And schedule for this week to next week. So, July 1st, I'll be providing an activity. Okay, hold on. I'm writing it over the chat box para may kopya tayo. July 6th, that is next week. Wednesday, we'll have a recitation. Same rules and guidelines. So please prepare our available, or sorry, the blindfold and the workstation. And for July 8th, we'll have our quiz for both of the subject if possible. So mag-announce na lang ako if ever hindi or magka-problems with the schedules. However, this will be our schedule. Tentative July 6th recitation, July 8th quiz. I'll send it on the chat box, so please screenshot it and send it for your respective groups and respective colleagues. And again, for Ruth, please remind on 424 that the assessments, hindi sa akin kukunin, so they will be reporting on their original section for the assessment. So sit in lang sila for the classes.
Okay, sige. Noted po.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. So yun, I'll start the discussion so we could finish before time. I'll have two modules for today. Let me okay. Finally setting up we got so Aerodrome and rescue kasi nandaanan na natin siya on into the runway, into the movement area, and the additional support 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 2 minutes. Next slide, we got here the topics included in the module. We'll start off with what is firefighting and rescue. We'll look into the airport facilities affecting the rescue and the firefighting services, communication and alarm requirements, emergency organization, aircraft fueling practice, available RFF information, and operational effectiveness and standards. Next slide, firefighting and rescue. So self-explanatory, of course, the firefighting and rescue commonly, so of course per country, per state, magkakaiba ng designation, but at the end, isa lang naman ang goal nila, which is firefighting and rescue. However, the address term is RFF or RFFS. That is the commonly or in general term ang address natin sa department na to. So that is rescue and firefighting services, RFF or RFFS. They provide, of course, aircraft rescue, crash rescue, firefighting, fire crash rescue. The service must always assume the possibility of and need for extinguishing a fire, which may result from aircraft landing, taking off, taxiing, or park, following immediately with an aircraft accident and incident occur at any time during the rescue operation. So first, siguro, important things we should remember and just for the safety, paano ba nabubuo ang isang fire? Of course, in order for us to have a fire, meron tayong sinusunod or may tayong tinatawag or nire-refer as the fire triangle. The fire triangle includes the oxygen, the heat, and the fuel. So tatlo. So kailangan natin ng oxygen for a fire to continue. We need heat para mag-combust yung available chemical or yung fuel. So fuel yung magiging chemical natin, heat will combust it, and of course we need oxygen for it to continue or for a fire to continue. And essentially, in firefighting, ang ginagawa lang naman natin sa firefighting is extinguishing or taking away one or more elements on the fire triangle sa tatlong yon. So either we or usually we remove there yung oxygen or yung heat. So inaalis natin yun for us to put off a fire. Usually naman, RFF services management, which should also be responsible, of course, with the service or the services provided by the RFF. Kasama na dito for them to be organized, equipped, staffed, and trained in such a manner na ma-provide la yung mga responsibilities, response time, operational effectiveness na kailangan natin on a fire rescue. Another thing is that, of course, yung RFF, kailangan meron niyang coordination with the airport inside, in the airport, as we have discussed before, meron tayong in and off the airport agency. Kasi at the end, hindi lang naman ito ang magiging ang people or team na magre-respond sa isang accident or sa isang fire. Sila lang yung first responder, yung RFF service natin on the airport. Slide number 4, we got here and storage, rescue, firefighting, and rescue. trucks or equipments we needed. Yung nakatable. So if meron tayong two vehicles, so dapat kaya natin with the complementary naman or dun sa backup, meron tayo dapat at least 100%. So isang refill doon sa ating RFF. Tower, since ang control tower ang pinaka-head ng airport management. So sila ang unang receiver pag may emergency tayo, may aksidente, may mayday, sila ang unang receiver. So dapat may direct communication si tower sa RFF. Usually radio lang naman yan. Another is an alerting system, not only a communication but a alerting system. Ano ba yung alerting system? Ito yung magiging the information sa RFF. So like alarms, lights na easy to access sa ating control tower in case of emergency. And another thing pala with the communication, not only from the tower to the RFF, but the RFF to the outside concerned agencies that outside the agencies na concerned doon sa emergency. So example, meron din tayong emergency access road as I have discussed before, which should be provided on an airport kung saan yung terrain condition permits construction to as the facilitate or to achieve yung response time. So not only for the outside agency but for them na hindi nila ma-facilitate yung response time, dapat meron tayong mga additional or emergency access route for our RFF. And with the outside agency, let me go ahead and I have another representation on the next slide. Let me go move the slides. So there we go. On our next slide, you could see here, sinasabi ko nga kanina, not only the RFF, yung RFF that is a rescue and firefighting service inside the airport, hindi lang yung in-airport facility, dapat meron din tayong communication dun sa mga off-airport facility. For example, fire, ang emergency, or an aircraft accident or incident that resulted to a fire. So for example, we got an airport here, an international airport, and you could see here on the map, we got several fire station within, I think probably within 10 to 20 nautical miles, just an estimate. And dapat nilook into yung mga ganitong layout. For example, you could see here, andito yung mga terminal natin. I'm not really sure, but based on the graph, ito yung residential area. This is a highway or a freeway, this one. And you could see here na nandito yung tatlong terminal, tatlong part based on my on the map. So ito, may tatlo tayong terminal building. So most probably ang mga entrance natin is on this side of the airport. But the airport exists as a whole. So dito pa, paano tong kabilang side na to? This open side. So what if may accident or incident tayo on this side or on this end of the airport? So kung gustong mag-rescue or available to rescue itong fire station on Walnut Woods Drive, so no need na for them para umikot on the airport. Sobrang lawak po ng mga airport natin. It's usually nga may mga airport tayong, within the uh, the land of two cities. So masyadong mahabang biyahe to, as you could see, for them to umikot and getting into the traditional airport gates available on this side. So yung fire station on the Walnut Woods Drive should be considered. We could provide access road here. So pwede tayo mag-connect ng emergency road here and an access road or crash gate here. Para in case may masira dito, nag-respond yung RFF, nag-achieve yung response time, kailangan ng tulong outside, we could contact them and immediately they could go inside this part of the airport. Hindi na kailangan pumunta with the terminal. So mga ganong consideration yung kino-consider natin. Next is communication and alarm requirements. So nabanggit ko na to kaya na-discuss ko na. Very self-explanatory. Kailangan lang we or them, the RFF, together with their crew and the tower and the airport management have a form of communication readily available. So ito yung mga individual requirement if you will divide it. Direct communication, of course, with the tower and the airport fire station dun sa ating RFF. Communication between the control tower and the RFF crew. So, not only doon sa kanilang station, of course, pag en route na yung mga vehicle natin, dapat may direct communication din to the vehicle, especially runway yang papasukin, active runway. Pag nagka-aksidente naman tayo, hindi lahat ng movement maho-halt. So, meron pa rin tayong mga aircraft on the air na kailangan mag-land, meron pa rin tayong mga aircraft na kailangan mag-taxi. So, kailangan si tower may control siya or communication with the crew. Next is communication between a fire station and the main station. Sabi ko nga, there could be one station provided on an airport, especially sa mga malalaking airport. Bakit tayo nagpo-provide ng one or more station? It's due because para ma-achieve yung response time na under sa law. Next is communication between the RFF vehicle, including where necessary a system to provide intercommunication. So another thing, dapat yung mga RFF vehicle, meron silang sariling communication with them. Not only sa tower, sila mismo per track may communication sila to one another. And lastly, an emergency alarm system to alert auxiliary personnel and appropriate organization. So yung alarm system natin, not only to alert the RFF service na we need you, we have this type of emergency, let's move out. So not only the RFF, but of course yung mga other department and personnel or appropriate organization in the airport para maging aware sila that an emergency is currently happening. Okay, on this next slide, mayroon akong link dito or video available. The link is provided here on the lower left portion. You could watch it on your free time. This is just a radio communication, an actual emergency happening. And you could see here yung response process, yung communication process na mga tinutukoy ko for the RFF and with the emergency. And this is an actual, again, an actual emergency. So we have a Delta, an Airbus A330 from Seattle to Hong Kong, climbing off on 16 left when the pilot reported a fire on engine 1. So that's left side request vectors box. So nag-request sila, nag-mayday, pabalik. And they landed 22 minutes after takeoff and stopped on one of the runway where the fire services are there available to address the emergency. Very good response time and communication available on this incident. It's October 26, 2016. Take a look. Very informative to. Next slide, we got a few information here. Very self-explanatory naman to. Di ko na siguro i-discuss thoroughly. We got ambulance and medical services. Of course, part yan ng RFF since this is focused on rescue also, not just firefighting. Next is watchroom. Um, their station should also or may provided na watchroom to provide a surveillance also with them during an emergency. Kasi mahirap naman kung nagre-rely lang sila with the information with the tower. So they should have their own watch room. Personnel, correct and proper construction of fire station can make an important contribution. Ito nabanggit ko na to last meeting. Ang personnel and the vehicle should be staffed accordingly based doon sa maximum capability nila. So, kunyari, yung maximum na sinaserve ng airport is A380. So, supposedly, ang personnel natin and number of vehicles, di ba may number tayo nakatable, and with the personnel, they are staffed accordingly sa maximum capability ng airport. Communication facility, na-discuss na natin. Move forward. Next slide, we got emergency organization, slide 10. So we got airport emergency plan, which we have already discussed before, yung mga information na kailangan, and each type of accident na discuss na natin to on the last meeting. 2 grid maps should be available. So one map confines the airport access road, location of water supplies, um, staging areas, railway, highways, and difficult terrain. The other naman is yung surrounding communities. So para in case na may emergency tayo, available yung plan uh, on the off-airport facilities also. So one map is mainly for the airport facilities and the other map is for the off-airport facilities pag kailangan. Nearest hospital, nearest police station, nearest firefighting station dapat available. I have an example of this map on the following slide. Slide 10, so ito yung isang example. We have staging area, water supply, yung pinaka-airport boundary, yan dyan. So you could see meron tayong mga staging area. So one example need natin address, kunyari may earthquake. So you could see that each terminal building meron silang staging area. In case of this kind, on my next slide. So we got an example of the other map na provided or yung mga off the airport facilities. So we got the airport here. You could see, medyo na-minimize na siya. And these are, for example, available hospital. So makikita mo dyan sa map. Yung mga nearest hospital in case of the emergency. Available or nearest within the from the air traffic control standby. So may mga kaya meron tayong mga standby position to anticipate unpredictable an emergency predetermined na provided ng ating aircraft. For a fire to cure, we have the fire triangle, oxygen, available yan on the air, hindi na natin makokontrol. Yung heat, yan, makokontrol natin yan. Yung fuel or yung chemical, makokontrol natin yan. And of course, kasama yan sa ating operation. We got the aircraft fuel from time to time and very, what do you call this, easily siya to ignite. So, kailangan precaution, general precaution, and taking care or practices must be done. So, napag-aaralan natin yung aircraft grounding sa last topic on the previous module, module number 2, previous presentation. So, hindi ko na ulitin yun. So, we ground the aircraft. May mga grounding points tayo on the airport per parking, per fueling services, per fuel truck. May mga ground points yan. May mga procedures tayong sinusunod for us to mitigate yung event of a fire or explosion. Since meron na nga tayong fuel, meron na tayong oxygen. So, kailangan na lang natin heat or yung pag-ignite. So, we got this grounding points or bonding points for us to dissipate or carry the load away from the aircraft refueling. Next slide, slide 17. Another information here, self-explanatory. Of course, pag nagre-refuel tayo, should not be driven or any other servicing function should not be driven or parked under aircraft wings. When fueling is in progress. Actually, before experience ko din, we have practices, especially sa mga apron na masisikip, crowded yung aircraft. Pag may nagre-refuel, hindi muna kami na nag-i-start ng engine or nag-clear prop just to have precaution. Hindi rin kami nagta-taxi within a taxiway na may nagre-refuel. Hanggat maaari, we will stop or iiwasan namin yung taxiway in an airport pag may nagre-refuel. Next is open flames. Of course, common sense. You should be prohibited on the airplane and in other location within 50 meters of any aircraft fueling operation. Cigarette lighters and matches. Extreme caution should be used when fueling during lightning and electrical storm. Fueling operation should be suspended. Okay, another thing, pag may kidlat or uh, storm tayo, usually naman kasi pag may ganun na, kina-cancel o naka-halt ang ating aircraft operation. But sinasabi rin dito, of course, bawal na tayo or fueling operation should be suspended. Same with the aircraft operation, hino-halt natin yan when we have severe thunderstorm. Portable fire extinguish equipment suitable for at least initial intervention is available, or personal train is ready available as a means of, quick um, response. So we have portable fire extinguisher, same sa bahay. So yung mga refueling trucks natin, required sila na meron din silang portable extinguishing equipment available para in case may problem, sila yung maging first responder. At hanggat maliit pa yung fire or yung issue, ma-solusyonan na agad. Next is the availability of the RFF information. So itong mga guidelines na binabanggit natin, these are the general guidelines na hanggat maaari nasusunod per airport, per country. So di ba meron tayong ICAO annexes within the UN para pare-parehas yung ating standards, not only in the airport, in the aircraft operation, in the airline operation, but also on the RFF or rescue services. So it is available on the Annex 14. That is Aerodrome. Also the operational effectiveness and standard. Nandun lahat ng details na kailangan natin. So in case ma-assign kayo in a RFF services sa airport, or nasa airport management kayo, of course, kailangan nyo i-manage yung RFF information, or sorry, RFF services, yung mga information needed nyo, andoon lahat yan sa Annex 14 ng ICAO, which is Aerodrome. And meron yung sariling chapter doon, if I'm not mistaken, it's chapter 9. Just a whole chapter specifically for Aerodrome emergency plan, rescue, and firefighting services. Andun lahat ng information needed natin. And next slide, slide 19. This will be the last slide for module number 3. I just have here um, a quick video presentation on how the RFF services works on an airport. So, andito yung response process, response time, and yung pinaka-procedural process nila. We have here an example within Atlanta International Airport, yung RFF nila doon. So Atlanta International Airport, one of the major airport to in US. So you could take a quick glimpse or look on how the RFF works on the airport. So I got the link here on the lower right of this slide. You could look into this on your free time. Okay, moving on to our term. This will be our last topic, last presentation, and last module for and management. So for this presentation, we will be dealing with heliports. So for the past discussion, past module, we deal all the information we will be encountering on a operating aerodrome or airport. So for this last presentation, we'll be getting on the operation of heliports or helicopters or rotary wing aircraft. Moving on to the next slide, we got the topics that we will be encountering for this module. So we'll be starting off with heliports. We'll be discussing few of the terminologies and words that we will be encountering throughout the presentation. Aeronautical data for heliports, different kinds or yung most or ma-encounter natin heliports present in the industry. We got surface level, elevated, helideck, and the shipboard heliports. We'll be reviewing obstacle limitation, surfaces and sectors. We'll move towards visual aids, indicators, markings, and the lights, and any available or general available emergency response and procedures. So let's go ahead. I got here around 20 slides for this stuff. So next slide, slide number 3, heliport. So we got, um, well, let's first define the heliport. Heliport is an aerodrome or a defined area on a structure intended to be used fully or in part for the arrival, departure, or surface movement of helicopters or the rotary wing aircraft. We got the first words we'll be identifying. We got the takeoff distance available, TODA, projected takeoff distance available, or TODA landing distance available. Okay, we got or this or the declared distances that is available to a heliport. So of course siguro aware kayo or mas aware kayo doon sa FATO or the final approach and takeoff area. That is the rectangular or the square portion on a heliport. However, we still categorize the distances available. First is the TODA, which is the length of the final approach and takeoff area or the FATO plus the length of the helicopter clearway. So the helicopter or the TODA is the same or the length of the FATO. However, if we are or we have any available clearway, masasama yon sa ating TODA. So it's FATO plus the clearway. Again, clearway are a defined area on an aerodrome which is controlled by the aerodrome or by the authority. Not necessarily na kailangan cemented siya or surface as long as it will accommodate the safe takeoff of the aircraft, it is considered as a clearway. So that is TODA, FATO plus clearway. Projected takeoff distance available. It's the length of the FATO declared available, suitable for helicopters to complete rejected takeoff. So yung RTODA, projected takeoff distance available, is the same length of the FATO. So the available length for the roll or the takeoff of the helicopter. Next is landing distance available. That will be the length of the FATO plus any additional area declared available and suitable for helicopter to complete a landing maneuver from a defined height. So on land distance available, this is the FATO or the same length as the FATO plus any declared available distances. So may mga instances kasi na the landing distance available is FATO plus an additional distance in case um, there would be an extra area for the final approach just to accommodate the landing. So if you will look into or forward to the meaning, it says there that to complete a landing maneuver from a defined height. So magkaka-vary na lang to, etong mga distances na to or the specific landing distance available if may available tayong distance for the final approach at a certain restriction or a defined height. So kung i-compare natin yung ano, sorry, I don't have a presentation. So parang displays threshold sa isang airport. So take off doon. However, hindi siya However, mas lenient tayo sa approaches with the helicopter kasi unlike the glide slope or the glide path ng fixed wing, mas maraming available ng ating helicopter. So as long as it is on the heliport manual na this available area could be used on the landing distance or the final approach at this glide path and at this distances and predetermined height, we could add that landing or that distance. However, if wala, it will be the same or equal to the FATO and equal din siya with the rejected takeoff distance available just in case na wala. Same as the takeoff distance available, if walang clearway, it will all be equal to the FATO. Next, two words is dynamic load-bearing surface and the static load-bearing surface. The dynamic load-bearing surface is defined as the surface capable of supporting the load generated by helicopter conducting an emergency touchdown. However, yung static load-bearing surface naman is yung capable surface of supporting the mass of a helicopter situated upon it. So bakit ba tayo may mga load-bearing surfaces? Kasi unlike, later we'll be discussing that, unlike with an aerodrome which is, structurally made sa isang land or surface level, sa heliport usually kasi nasa mga remote areas siya. Or for example nga, as we have discussed or will be discussing, they could be elevated part, it could be on a ship, it could be on a building or a structure. So kailangan natin computein yung load-bearing surface na kaya ng structure na yon, ng ship na yon, or yung specific area. So yung dynamic loading lang naman po is yung with or to support if we will be rejecting a takeoff or we will be having an emergency touchdown. So it will be the weight of the aircraft plus the momentum ng pag-touchdown nito. And the static load is yung standard load na ibibigay ng helicopter on the heliport during the um, the correct landing and or the standard correct landing operation and performance. Moving forward, we got few words here: helicopter air taxiway, helicopter clearway, helicopter ground taxiway, helicopter stand, helicopter taxiway. First is clearway. So pinag-aralan na natin even on water, kahit hindi siya surface, as a suitable area over which a helicopter may operate and accelerate to achieve a specific height. So that is the helicopter clearway. The helicopter taxiway naman po, air taxiway and ground taxiway. So from the word itself, taxiway, pa-familiar na kayo dyan. Ang pagkakaiba lang po nila, pag sinabi nating air taxiway, is that the helicopter or that taxiway is only applicable for taxiing through air. Ang ground taxiway naman po, we could use or intended for the surface movement of the wheel or the wheel of the helicopter in case na may wheel siya or may option siya to have wheel on the undercarriage. So, usually hindi ginagawa tong ground taxiway. However, may mga option kasi na may wheel yung helicopter. So it means it's available or suitable for a ground taxiway. But the traditional method on operation, which I have experienced, is the air taxiway. So yan naman po, may predetermined height yan per aerodrome. So pag nag-taxi si helicopter, they are lifting it depending on the aerodrome, and then magte-trace sila on the given taxiway. So sir, bakit pa nagpapa-air taxiway if, suitable naman po si chopper to take off and land at any specific point? Yes, that is correct. However, if the chopper or the helicopter will be operating sa mga complicated aerodrome, sa mga international or commercial airports, the problem is meron tayong predetermined operation ng commercial, um, commercial operation doon. So meron tayong predetermined path for the takeoff and the landing. And may circuit yan, may sinusunod yan na pathway. However, or the problem is, hindi naman pwedeng um, uh, bigyan natin ng privilege just for a helicopter na mag-bypass doon sa mga pathway na to or sa mga approach paths natin. Ngayon, ang nangyayari is that may certain area lang ang helicopter sa mga ganitong commercial airports. So may area sila for a specific area on an aerodrome to take off and landing. So dito na tayo magkakaroon ng taxiing ng helicopter. So since may sarili silang area, may sarili din silang pathway. So may sarili silang approach procedure, may sarili silang outbound procedure or takeoff procedure on that specific airport. And in order for them to attain those operations, they will have to taxi on that specific area. So kaya po tayo nagkakaroon ng air taxiway. Next is helicopter stand. Of course, provide the parking for the helicopter usually naman it's on the hangar, helicopter taxi route, and lift off area. Yung touchdown and lift off area naman po, that is the specific area na magta-touchdown or magle-lift off si helicopter. So, dyan natin kinocompute yung pinaka-dynamic sorry, this is the procedure. Yung magiging path is yung segment. So the segment of a helicopter in the pin approach procedure from the map, landing location for a diagram para mas maintindihan natin. So ito yung approach or point space approach or yung pin. So ito yung helipad. So usually, di ba sinabi ko nga, ang mga helipad, heliport, located yan on remote areas, um, located sa mga buildings, structure, which we will have a lot of obstacle. For example, this one. You could see the helipad is within a terrain. So we use the point in space approach to have a certain area where we will commence our final approach. So that is the procedure. After going doon sa point in space na yun, ibig sabihin, from that point, you could approach the helipad or heliport safely. So this will be that segment o yung tinutukoy namang point in space visual segment. So this could be, rather like this on a terrain. Pwede rin yan. Kunyari si helipad within a city. Sa mga city natin, major city, we got helipad, heliport on the um, building or on the building structure na may mga building structure din beside the heliport or that building na pwedeng mas matataas pa yung building beside doon sa mismong paglalandingan. So we use the point in space approach para from that space or that point, ibig sabihin we could approach the helipad and heliport safely. So it's a procedure. Yung dadaanan natin, that will be the segment of that certain point in space approach procedure. Next, ito, helideck, elevated heliport, shipboard heliport, surface level heliport, witching area. We'll be discussing that in a few. Moving forward, next I got here a slide and a drawing or a presentation of a helicopter or a rotor wing. And I have this presentation just to show you na we measure the length of the rotary wing from here. So that will be um, the most rearward position ng ating tail rotor. So this is the tail rotor. So yung most rearward position, just in case na wala tayong other parts na mas layo pa, but just in case na wala, it will be the most rearward position from the most forward position of the main rotor or the rotary wing. So that, or doon natin mini-measure yung overall dimension or length ng ating chopper or ng helicopter. So again, from the most forward position ng main rotor to the most rearward part or the most rearward position of the tail rotor. Very important to on chopper operation since nga we conduct this on buildings and remote areas na aware tayo doon sa total dimension ng ating aircraft and the total dimension the heliport could accommodate. Next slide is aeronautical data for helicopters. So na-discuss ko na to, HRP, the reference point, and the heliport elevation. So very important data to since unang-una yung reference point when we commence a pins procedure and we operate a helicopter, we need the exact reference point. Kasi remember, doon sa pins, we are tagging a certain point in space from there going to the heliport. So when we tag on that pins, magtatag din tayo doon sa exact na reference point nung heliport na yun. So very important na we got the reference point and the correct reference point, since that approach is done visually and using the instrument together. Next is heliport elevation. Very important din to kasi ang mga heliport natin, sabi ko nga, located yan on remote areas. It could be located on ship. It could be located on a top of a mountain, located in a top of a building. And we need to um, know the correct elevation, since that the density, when we increase in altitude, remember, we have a change in density. So, mas bumababa yung density. Pag bumababa si density, bumababa yung capability or power na mapoprovide ng ating engine and yung effectivity ng ating wing. So, dalawa agad yung bumababa pag bumababa ang ating density and tumataas yung ating elevation. So, very important to know the correct elevation of the certain heliport. Heliport dimension. So it's very important now we got the dimension of the heliport, mainly the takeoff, sorry, the touchdown and lift-off area, and the final approach and takeoff area. So that's very important that we have those dimension para we could know or we could compare with the rotary wing that we are operating if capable yung heliport na yun to accommodate us. Also, if there are available ground taxiways, stands, and air transit routes available on the heliport, we should also have that data. Next is declared distances. So same as this one, the flight crew calculate the their takeoff and landing procedures based on the given data or present data, and kailangan din tong mga data na to. So, kukumpute nila yan depending on the weight on their landing and the weight on their takeoff, the current density, and the other available factors. So, kailangan we have the data for the declared distances. On the next slide, I guess I have the presentation or a picture for you to compare the dimension. Here on the picture, there you could see now and compare the difference of the final approach and takeoff area and the touchdown and lift-off area. So ito yung FATO and ito yung touchdown and lift-off area. The FATO is the one under the broken red line, the broken black line, and the touchdown and lift-off area is the one on the solid black line. And the yellow one will be the helicopter uh, marking. Next slide, we got slide number 10. So from slide number 10 to around slide 16, we'll be discussing yung mga different heliports na may encounter natin or the common one. First is surface level heliport. So very self-explanatory. We have, or it says here, surface level. However, we still need to consider the elevation of the surface where the heliport is located, since sabi ko nga, the density changes. So as long as we, or as soon as we increase our altitude, the density will become less or the air will become thinner. It will provide a less efficient engine and a less efficient wing. So still elevation is considered. We got few terms here, very self-explanatory. However, we got two words, we have few words here, or few new words, performance of class 2 and class 3. So ang helicopter or rotor wing, kina-classify po yung performance niya into three. We got class 1, class 2, and class 3. And these performances are categorized depending on their capability to address a critical power unit failure. So for class 1, these are helicopters categorized na in an event of a critical power unit failure, they could safely continue or land within the rejected takeoff or on the landing area. So those are categorized as class 1. Class 2 naman po, in case of a power unit failure or an engine failure, they could safely continue or force landing during takeoff or within the takeoff or landing area. And class 3 naman po, these are helicopters that in case of a power unit failure, an engine failure, it can only or only a forced landing is required or capable. So that is how we categorize the performance or operation of a helicopter. We got class 1, class 2, and class 3. Take a note on that. On the next slide, I got here one example of a surface level heliport. You could see, now of course, it's in the surface level. So, ka-level siya nung ground on this specific city or town. However, you will still need, as I mentioned, to consider the elevation. So, pwedeng hindi, although surface level yung heliport, this specific city or town is way above the sea level. So, we need to consider pa rin yung elevation for the uh, lesser or lower density on the heliport. Next type of heliport is the elevated heliport. So this heliport na provide natin to in case we cannot or we don't have a suitable area or space on the ground level. Usually present to sa mga cities or major cities, and in our school meron din tayong elevated heliport located on building A if I'm not mistaken, and I think it is still operational. So elevated heliport, few things to consider. Unang-una on this, security on the choice of site. So since you will be or you will be putting this in a building, so possibly or we need to have an adequate security to keep it safe and operational. So usually kasi sa mga business building, marami yung umuupa. Hindi lang naman yan isang company. So we got a lot of personnel. We need to have the heliport, kung kaninong heliport yun, to have it secured. Next, yung immediate vicinity of the site. Sabi ko nga, katulad kanina on the pins, in regards to the city, hindi naman porket nasa yung heliport is ikaw na yung tallest building in the area. You will have to consider other buildings. You have to evaluate any other obstacle available on the area to finalize or to have your takeoff and landing approach or procedure. Next is items such as air vents, machinery housing, and instances on the of the helicopter. So kailangan natin i-consider yan. Unang-unang air vents, napakadami yan. Especially on the cities, ang air vents sila ay nakalagay on the top of the building. So not only ito as consider this um, as an obstruction, for example, the lift as an obstruction since uh, they have a height protruding on the building. Another thing to consider is yung material na lumalabas on this following air vent. So pwede kasing yung air na lumalabas doon sa air vent na yon is hindi healthy. So for example, we got an air vent, naglagay ng air vent on the heliport sa tabi ng outside naman with the area. However, may lab pala doon. For example, a lab na maglalabas ng toxic or let's say hindi man toxic but hindi healthy on the combustion of our engine. So we need to consider this kasi pwedeng will we will be commencing our takeoff na inhale ng engine, magkaroon tayo ng power unit failure, engine failure while taking off or landing on that specific building. So we need to consider these following factors in case of any emergency. Another example also ng elevated heliports are yung mga sa atin nga, sa school meron, yung mga nasa hospital. So isa rin to sa mga example. I got a picture on the next slide. Let's take a look. There we got the or one example of a elevated heliport on a hospital. Next is heliport or helidecks on offshore installation. So yung mga nasa onshore installation, these are for the remote area. Mainly yung mga gas station natin available on the sea. Nasa mga remote location to yung mga gas station or gas field rather. Mga gas field nasa gitna yan ng dagat. So the only method of transportation available is a helicopter. And um, having a heliport on offshore installation, we have things to consider. Unang-una is yung conflicting demands of the basic design. So usually kasi when we conduct or when we build an offshore installation heliport, nawawala tayo doon sa provided or sa dimension required by a local authority. So yan yung one thing we must consider. Pag nawala tayo sa dimension, remember, we will conduct an aeronautical study to provide na we could still deviate from the required standard and still have the safety. Another thing to consider, same as na-discuss ko kanina with the air vent, is yung mga exhaust gases on this offshore installation. Usually nga, these are gas-filled. So may mga available tayong exhaust gases from that structure which we need to be aware of. Kailan sila nag-ooperation, ano ba itong mga exhaust gases na to. So the crew and the heliport operator should be aware on this exhaust. Next is ambient temperature. So another thing, hindi lang naman density ang naka-affect sa performance ng isang helicopter or ng aircraft, we need to survey the ambient temperature. Kasi pwedeng maka-affect yung mga exhaust ducts or vents ng offshore installation na to on the ambient temperature. So not only with the actual or the main component nung nandoon sa exhaust gas, although healthy yung gas or hindi siya makaka-affect on the performance, temperature naman na may po-provide niya on the engine yung maka-affect. So we got a limit of 2 to 3 degrees for the ambient temperature for offshore installation. On the next slide, I have here an example of a offshore installation on a gas-filled structure. So we got one here. Just in case hindi tayo familiar with this gas-filled station. So sa country natin, meron tayong isa, if I'm not mistaken. Or yun lang yung, sikat. But I have one na alam ko yung sa Malampaya, I think. That is right above Palawan. So it's in the middle of the ocean. So it's one of the biggest gas field we have in our country. Next slide, we got helidecks on ship or shipboard heliports. With this naman, as you could see here, same criteria, same factors yung kailangan natin consider compared to a offshore installation. However, ang another na nagiging problema with this heliport on located on a ship Not only with the actual operation, how yung availability niya to commence as a obstacle-free area. So, saan natin ilo-locate siya na magiging obstacle-free on the ship. So, meron tayong tinatawag na poop deck. So, it's a term on ship wherein it's the raised part of the ship compared to the ground or the level of the ship. So, nagre-raise tayo ng one portion, yung tinatawag nating poop deck, in order to have a clear approach surface or visual doon sa helideck or sa heliport to provide a full degrees of operation or a larger degree of operation. So on the next slide, let's see one example of a pulp deck. So we got here a ship and you could see here na wala naman na siyang ibang suitable space on this level or on this crew level to have the heliport or the helideck. So ang ginagawa nila, they have a poop deck. So it's an additional structure way above on the level of the ship. Ngayon, if we put it on or above the level of the ship, we could now have clear view on the heliport, a larger degree of operation, and it will provide us a safety factor to have the heliport on the elevated portion. Next is obstacle limitation surface and sectors. With this, hindi ko na siguro i-discuss to save time. The same concept ng OLS on an aerodrome. However, we only have three for a heliport. We got the approach surface, the transitional surface, and the takeoff climb surface. So tatlo lang on a heliport, not compared to a complete OLS surface on a aerodrome. On the next slide, I have a visual presentation or representation here for us to better, have a visual sa sarili natin. And another thing pala, di ba we have a touchdown lift off area on the middle. Then we got the FATO, the square side or the next box. The larger area or dimension of the heliport is called the safety area. So we got three. So we got the safety, the FATO, and the exact touchdown and lift off area. Next is visual aids, indicators, and marking. So some of this, same lang naman with the aerodrome. So with a heliport, it is required to be equipped at least one wind direction indicator. So kailangan meron tayong isang windsock or wind cone available on a heliport, at least isa. It should be visible at least 200 meters, and usually it is or should be in a single color only. So helicopter, we have here some markings. So na-discuss na natin to kanina. Touchdown and lift off area. We got the touchdown and positioning marking, the FATO, the maximum allowable mass marking. So ito wala on this figure, sorry. I have this on the next slide. We'll have or I'll provide it later. The rest nandito na sa markings na yan. Next is beacon. So heliport beacon. Napag-aralan na natin to, yung airport beacon, kung anong kulay yung sa heliport. Next is ALS, approach lighting system. Depending na yan, available per heliport. Visual slope or visual approach slope indicator, same. Touchdown and lift off area, lightning system. We'll have, or I'll have again the presentation on the next slide for the lighting system and the maximum allowable mass. Let's move on to the next one. Here, I have an example of a poop deck or a shipboard heliport or helideck. Yung sinasabi ko kanina, allowable mass, ito po yun. Sorry kung medyo malabo on your end, pero ito yan. So, I think this is 12.6 if I'm not mistaken, and it has a P at the end. So, it means tons. So, from your, or from the crew computation of the weight, they could check if that specific heliport could handle their aircraft. So, way above pa lang approaching, they could see the maximum allowable weight the helideck or heliport could accommodate. Another value, so this one's just the name of the ship or the heliport. Another value you could usually see on a heliport is the number 22. So it could be a different number, but it's number 22 here. So that is, or it is called the D value. So yung D value naman po, that is the largest dimension ng helicopter or rotors na kaya i-accommodate ng helideck. So for example, a helideck on a ship. So meron pa rin naman tayong mga protruding structures on the ship. So it means na ang maximum in meters po to, 22 meters ang maximum na kaya niya. So that is the maximum rotor na kaya niyang i-accommodate. So from the approach pa lang ng uh, chopper or ng isang helicopter, it could easily identify the weight and the maximum diameter ng rotor na kaya i-accommodate ng isang heliport. Next is helicopter emergency response. So hindi na ako magde-discuss dito, self-explanatory naman to when you read it out on your module or on my PowerPoint. It's the same concept we have discussed on the last presentation, yung Aerodrome emergency planning. So that's our topic on the previous presentation, previous sync class. So the same concept applies on the helicopter emergency planning. Next is helicopter operating procedure. Both are self-explanatory. We got the helicopter safety and reporting officer. So sa isang heliport, we need to have one safety or reporting officer assigned. So hindi pwedeng wala tayong personnel pag meron tayong operating or an active heliport in use. So we always need to have one safety or reporting officer or personnel assigned on that heliport. So, yan yung mga responsibilities niya. Unang-una, of course, he or she must be trained. Alam niya yung responsibility niya usually, and we need, or he or she can initiate NOTAM. NOTAM is the notice to airman and to communicate the current condition of the heliport to any personnel. So we could, or he could provide it to ATC, pilots, and other aerodrome users. So we need one personnel or employee to take the responsibility of a active heliport. Next is helicopter serviceability inspection. Of course, meron pa rin tayong inspection. Same with an aerodrome. So we will be issuing a registration and it's subject to inspection. However, wala na akong nilagay na in details dito. It is subject per authority or per local authority and the current laws available for the inspection. Usually may checklist naman yan and may mga assigned personnel on the local authority of the government of the country for the inspection. And that ends our presentation for this class and the module for 424. Let me close my slide and be back for a Q&A. Okay, any question so far? Section 4. with the topic. I do apologize if medyo napahaba yung discussion due to ISP issue. Any questions so far? Okay, question. Going once, going twice. So if wala ng question, I'll see you later again for 422, an hour discussion, one module. Thank you and happy